The rain fell like judgment on Denver that November night. In the darkness of a third-floor apartment, Reese Donovan sat at a kitchen table, scarred by years of use she could not remember making. The single lamp above cast a yellow circle of light that seemed too small for the weight of what it illuminated. A Beretta M9, government issue, clean and oiled with the muscle memory of 1,000 field strips. A half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels, the glass beside it still wet from the last pour. And a photograph, face down. She didn't need to see it to know every detail. Tyler Garrett in desert fatigues, that crooked smile, that absolute certainty that he was going home. Reese's hands were steady as she picked up the pistol. 2 years of shaking, and now at the end, they were finally still. The mechanism made its familiar sound as she pulled the slide back. Check the chamber. Old habits. Even now. In the corner of the room, barely visible in the shadow beyond the lamplight, a shape stirred. Maximum's. The German Shepherd had been lying so still she'd almost forgotten he was there. Almost. But a combat veteran never truly forgets a living thing in the room with them. Even when they want to. Especially then. 6 years old. 85 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. A mark ran down his right shoulder where shrapnel had torn through fur and flesh in Mosul. Purple Heart dog tag on his collar, though the Army didn't officially award such things to animals. His handler had put it there anyway. His last handler, her father. Max's eyes caught the lamplight, amber and unblinking. He watched her with the intensity of something that had seen war and survived it and learned what to watch for in the humans who hadn't. Reese set the pistol on the table, reached for the whiskey. That's when Max moved. Not rushed, not panicked, with the deliberate purpose of a working dog executing a command she hadn't given. He crossed the small kitchen in 3 strides, positioned himself between her and the table, between her and the gun, between her and the decision she'd been building toward for weeks. Move, Max. Her voice came out rough. Months of not speaking to anyone will do that. The dog didn't move. She reached past him for the bottle. His head shifted, blocked her hand with his muzzle, gentle but absolute. I said move. Nothing. The K9's gaze held hers. In 4 tours of combat, Max had learned to read humans better than most humans read each other. He saw what she was about to do. And he had been trained for exactly this. Reese tried to push him aside. 90 pounds of Shepherd didn't budge. She put both hands on his shoulders, shoved harder. Max leaned into her hands, absorbed the force, stood his ground. Something cracked in her chest. Please, she whispered. Please, just let me. Max placed one paw on her forearm. Not aggressive, a trained pressure point, a grounding technique taught to service dogs for veterans in crisis. The weight was precise, calculated, possible to ignore. The dam broke. Reese Donovan, 35 years old, former Army Ranger Bronze Star recipient, survivor of 3 deployments and 1 terrible mistake, collapsed into the dog that wouldn't leave his post. She buried her face in his thick fur and sobbed like she hadn't since the funeral. Since the flag. Since the moment she'd understood that coming home didn't mean the war was over. Max stood firm, warm and solid and alive, his heartbeat steady against her chest. A warrior on duty. Still, the memory came without permission, the way they always did. Kandahar Province, September 2022. The sun a white hammer against the dust. She and Tyler on patrol, 3rd week of their final rotation before going home. The land around them brown and beige and ochre, every shade of earth except the green of living things. Tyler walked point, always did, said he had a 6th sense for bad ground. 23 days, he'd said over his shoulder, grinning behind his ballistic glasses. 23 days and I'm taking Sarah to Fenway, proposing right there at home plate if they'll let me. They won't let you. They will when I tell them I'm a war hero. You're an idiot. Hero, idiot. There's a difference. She'd laughed, actually laughed. When was the last time before that? When was the last time after? They'd been checking coordinates on a GPS unit, triple checking because intelligence said the area was clear, but intelligence had been wrong before. The device was acting up, signal cutting in and out. Tyler had stopped to wait for her to get a lock. She was 30 seconds behind him, staring at a screen, trusting technology over instinct. Tyler took 3 more steps. The world went white, then red. Then the screaming started, and she realized it was her own voice, and Tyler wasn't making any sound at all anymore, because Tyler wasn't. Max's wet nose against her cheek pulled her back. The kitchen. Denver. 2 years in an ocean and a lifetime away from that road. But not far enough. Never far enough. Reese pulled back, wiped her face with shaking hands. Looked at the bitch who'd just saved her life for the 2nd time. First time in Mosul when he'd alerted to an IED and saved his entire unit. This time in a dark apartment in Denver when the enemy was herself. You're still on duty, aren't you? she whispered. You don't know how to stop. Max sat, formal, precise, a K9 waiting for the next command. But his gaze held something else, something that looked almost like understanding. Reese glanced at the pistol, at the bottle, then back at Max. Okay, she said quietly. K-boy, I hear you. She stood on unsteady legs, picked up the Beretta, safed it, put it back in the lockbox under the sink where it belonged. The bottle stayed on the table. For now, that was enough. Through the dirty window, Denver sparkled with lights she'd stopped seeing months ago. Somewhere in that grid of illumination, people were living lives that made sense, that had purpose, that moved forward instead of circling the same moment of failure over and over. Lord, she said to the empty air, if I still have a purpose here, if there's still something I'm supposed to do, I need you to show me, because I can't see it anymore. The words felt hollow. Prayers usually did these days. But somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang midnight. And on the table, her cell phone buzzed with an incoming call from a number she didn't recognize. Max's ears pricked forward. The voice on the other end was professionally neutral, male, older, the kind of voice that delivered bad news for a living and had learned not to inflect. Miss Donovan, this is Aldridge from Aldridge and Associates. I'm calling regarding your father, Colonel Marcus Donovan. Reese's hand tightened on the phone. She hadn't spoken to her father in 4 years. Not since he'd missed her homecoming from her second deployment because of operational commitments he couldn't discuss. Not since she'd stopped trying to earn the approval of a man carved from granite and classified documents. What about him? A pause. Professional sympathy loaded into the silence. I'm sorry to inform you that the colonel passed away yesterday morning. Heart attack. Very sudden. He didn't suffer. The words landed like rounds fired from a distance. You heard them, registered the impact, felt nothing yet because shock was its own kind of armor. I see. There will be a small private service this Thursday, just family. But I'm calling primarily because the reading of the will is scheduled for Friday morning, 10 a.m. at our offices in Boston. Your attendance is strongly requested. I don't want anything from him. Nevertheless, Miss Donovan, your presence is required. There are conditions in the will that specifically pertain to you. Conditions. Of course there were. Marcus Donovan had never done anything without conditions clauses and contingencies. Fine, she said. Friday, 10 a.m. Thank you. And Miss Donovan, I was asked to convey that the colonel left specific instructions regarding a companion. You'll understand when you arrive. The line went dead. Reese lowered the phone, stared at it like it might explain what the hell a companion meant in the vocabulary of a career intelligence officer who'd spent 30 years keeping secrets from his own family. Max whined, low, questioning. She looked down at him, at the Purple Heart tag, at the scars he carried from a war she'd fought in too. Looks like we're going to Boston, boy. The dog's tail gave one slow thump against the floor. For the first time in months, Reese Donovan had somewhere to be. The offices of Aldridge and Associates occupied the 4th floor of a building in downtown Boston that had probably been fashionable in 1960 and hadn't been updated since. Reese stood in the elevator watching the numbers climb, wearing the only clean clothes she owned that weren't workout gear or sleepwear. Black slacks, white button-down, a blazer that didn't quite fit anymore because she'd lost 20 pounds since leaving the service. She looked like she was attending a funeral, which technically she was supposed to have done yesterday. But she'd arrived in Boston at midnight and spent the night in a motel that charged by the hour and morning had come too fast. The elevator dinged, 4th floor. The receptionist directed her to conference room B with a sympathetic smile that Reese didn't return. The door was already open. Inside, a long mahogany table polished to a mirror shine. Leather chairs that probably cost more than her truck. Windows overlooking the historical district. And her family. Garrett Donovan sat at the far end of the table, 40 years old and looking like success had been tailored specifically to fit him. Charcoal suit, Swiss watch, hair that had gone silver at the temples in a way that made him look distinguished instead of old. He was on his phone typing something with the concentrated intensity of a man whose time was worth $300 an hour. He didn't look up when she entered. Beside him sat his twin sister. Evangeline Donovan had their father's features, sharp, assessing. She wore a cream silk blouse and pearls, her dark hair swept into something architectural. She glanced at Reese and her expression flickered through pity, disdain, and dismissal in the space of a heartbeat. Reese, she said, voice like chilled wine, you made it. I was invited. We weren't sure you'd come, given your situation. Situation. The word landed with careful precision. Code for unemployed, for broken, for the family embarrassment who'd gone to war and come back wrong. Garrett finally looked up from his phone. His eyes traveled over her with the same assessment he'd give a balance sheet. Found her lacking. You look rough, little sister. Funeral was yesterday. I'm off the clock. Even so, standards. 20 years of this. 20 years of being measured against invisible metrics and found wanting. 20 years of watching her siblings build empires while she built nothing but scar tissue and bad habits. The door opened behind her. Aldridge entered. 70 if he was a day with wireframe glasses and a leather portfolio that had aged as gracefully as he had. Behind him came a paralegal with a laptop and a man in his 50s wearing khakis and a polo shirt embroidered with a logo Reese didn't recognize. The man had a leash in his hand, and at the end of that leash was Max. The German Shepherd entered the conference room with the calm dignity of a dog who'd been in stranger places than this. His gaze swept the room. Registered Garrett. Evangeline, the paralegal, Aldridge, then found Reese. Something changed in the set of his shoulders. Not quite recognition. Assessment. His head tilted slightly. That K9 focus she'd seen before. Evaluating, deciding. Miss Donovan, Aldridge said, settling into his chair at the head of the table. Mr. Donovan, Miss Donovan, thank you all for coming. Let's begin. He opened the portfolio, drew out documents that looked older than Reese felt. The last will and testament of Colonel Marcus James Donovan, drafted 6 months ago and witnessed in accordance with Massachusetts state law. 6 months ago, the colonel had known, had felt death coming, or made the kind of cold calculation he was famous for. Planned for this day with the same precision he'd planned operations that never made it into official records. Aldridge's voice was a monotone, the kind that had read 1,000 wills and would read 1,000 more. The preliminaries first. Small bequest to charities. A sizable donation to the Army Ranger Foundation. Provision for his housekeeper of 20 years. Then the meat of it. To my son, Garrett Marcus Donovan. Garrett leaned forward slightly. I leave the sum of $15 million to be held in trust along with my shares in Donovan Holdings to be distributed according to the terms outlined in Appendix C. $15 million. Said like it was $15. Garrett's expression didn't change. He'd expected this. Probably had already spent it in his mind. To my daughter, Evangeline Claire Donovan, I leave the sum of $15 million to be held in trust along with the penthouse property located at 432 Park Avenue, New York City. Evangeline smiled, thin, victorious. She'd won something, though Reese wasn't sure what the game had been. Aldridge turned a page. And to my daughter, Reese Alexandra Donovan. The room got very quiet. I leave the entirety of the property located in Oak Ridge, Montana, including the business, the land, and all structures thereon. Silence. Then Garrett laughed. Short, sharp, humorless. The gas station, that condemned piece of... He caught himself. Remembered there were lawyers present. That property hasn't been operational in 15 years. Nevertheless, Aldridge said mildly, it is Miss Donovan's inheritance. Evangeline's eyes glittered. How appropriate. The broken child gets the broken property. There is one additional provision. Aldridge continued, unperturbed by the venom in the room. The colonel's personal companion, Max, is to remain with the Oak Ridge property under the sole care of Reese Donovan. This condition is non-negotiable and must be accepted in full to receive the property. The man holding Max's leash stepped forward, extended the leather lead toward Reese. Ma'am, he said quietly, Max has been waiting for you. Reese looked at the dog. Max looked back. I don't want a dog, she said, voice flat. I don't even want the property. The terms are absolute, Aldridge replied. Accept both or forfeit the inheritance entirely. Garrett's smile was a knife in expensive packaging. At least you'll have a roof over your head, assuming the roof hasn't collapsed yet. Evangeline leaned back in her chair, studied her manicure. We did try to warn Father that giving you responsibility might be premature, given your history. History, another careful word, code for PTSD, for the psych evaluation she'd failed, for the discharge that wasn't quite honorable and wasn't quite not, for the daughter who'd broken under pressure. Reese stood, every eye in the room tracked her. She walked to the man with the leash, looked down at Max. The dog sat at perfect attention. K9 discipline, but his gaze held something else. That same assessment from before. That same question. Are you ready for this mission? Ma'am, the handler said softly. The colonel specifically requested Max be placed with you. He was very clear about it. Said you'd need him more than you knew. My father didn't know what I needed. With respect, ma'am, the colonel knew Max, served with him for 4 years. If he thought you two belonged together, there was a reason. Reese took the leash. The leather was warm from the handler's grip. Max stood, moved to her left side, sat again. The position a K9 takes with their handler. Not close, not affectionate, but there. Where do I sign? Reese asked. Aldridge slid papers across the table. She signed without reading them. What did it matter? A gas station in Montana was probably worth less than the paper the deed was printed on. But Max, She looked down at him, he looked up. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or just the acknowledgement that they were both soldiers who'd survived the same war and ended up here in a room full of people who'd never understand what that meant. Congratulations, little sister, Garrett said, already standing, already dismissing her from his attention. Try not to burn the place down. Evangeline paused on her way to the door, leaned close. Her perfume was expensive and cold. Call us if you need money, she whispered. We'll be happy to buy you out, eventually. Then they were gone. The conference room empty except for Aldridge and his paralegal, and the handler who'd delivered Max like a package from beyond the grave. Reese stood there, leash in hand, inheritance in her pocket, and a dog at her side, who'd been trained by a father who'd never trained her. Miss Donovan, Aldridge said gently, there's one more thing. The colonel left this for you, to be opened only when you reached Oak Ridge. He handed her a sealed envelope, heavy paper, her name in her father's precise handwriting. She didn't open it, just folded it and put it in her pocket next to the signed papers. Thank you, she said. We're done here. Outside, Boston was doing what Boston did. Moving, living, being a city full of people with purposes and plans. Reese stood on the sidewalk with a dog she didn't ask for and an inheritance she didn't want, and the growing certainty that her father's last act hadn't been generosity. It had been strategy. Max sat beside her, patient, waiting for the command that would tell him what came next. Looks like we're going to Montana, boy, she said. The dog's tail thumped once against the concrete. The drive from Boston to Montana took 3 days. Reese could have flown, could have shipped Max and cargo and been there in hours. But the thought of airports and crowds and the inevitable moment when someone thanked her for her service with that careful sympathy that meant they knew she was broken. She drove. The F-150 was 12 years old with 200,000 miles and an engine that burned oil. But it ran. That was enough. Max rode shotgun. Didn't sleep much. Watched the landscape change from city to farmland to prairie with the focused attention of a dog trained to watch for threats. They stopped at rest areas. Reese walked him and he did his business with military efficiency. No playing, no sniffing around. Just the task completed, then back to the truck. At night, they stayed at motels off the interstate. The kind that took cash and didn't ask questions. Reese would wake at 3 a.m. from nightmares she couldn't remember, and Max would be there sitting by the bed, his gaze catching the parking lot lights. Not comforting her, just present, on duty. The third day, they crossed into Montana. The land opened up. Mountains to the west like ancient teeth against the sky. Grassland rolling in waves toward horizons so distant they might have been another country. Reese had grown up in Boston. Concrete and brick and buildings that blocked out the sun. This was something else. Something vast enough to make her feel small in a way that wasn't about failure. Just perspective. Oak Ridge wasn't on most maps. Population 400 and change. One main street with a diner, a hardware store, a post office, and not much else. The kind of town people left and didn't come back to unless they had no choice. Donovan's service station sat at the far edge of town where the pavement turned to gravel and the gravel turned to dirt and civilization gave up trying. Reese pulled into the lot and killed the engine. Sat there, stared. The place was a corpse. That was the word that came to mind. Not abandoned, not derelict, dead. 2 fuel pumps from the 1980s, their analog displays frozen on prices that hadn't been real in 30 years. The concrete around them cracked into a jigsaw of broken pieces. Islands of weeds growing through. The convenience store was a small rectangle of sun-bleached wood and grimy windows. The sign above the door had been red once. Now it was the color of rust. Donovan's service station and letters half gone. Behind the store, a 2-bay garage. Doors rusted shut. More weeds. And above it all, a small apartment. 2nd floor. 1 window. Dark. This was worth $15 million to her siblings. This was what her father thought she deserved. Max whined. Low. Low uncertain. Yeah, Reese said. I know. She got out. The air smelled like sagebrush and dust and the particular emptiness of places that used to matter and don't anymore. The key from Aldridge fit the front door of the store. The lock fought her rust and disuse, making it stubborn. Then it gave. The door swung inward with a horror movie creak. Inside was worse. Dust thick enough to show footprints that might have been months old. Shelves lined with products so faded by sunlight they'd lost their labels. A counter with an ancient cash register. Linoleum floor cracked and curling at the edges. And silence. The kind that pressed against eardrums. That made tinnitus sound loud. Max entered behind her. His claws clicked on the floor. He swept the room with that K9 efficiency, checking corners, doorways, threats. Found none, Saturday. Home sweet home, Reese muttered. The stairs to the apartment were around back, wooden, probably a fire hazard. They groaned under her weight but held. The apartment door opened easier. One room serving as kitchen, living room, bedroom. A bathroom in the corner. Furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts. A thin layer of dust over everything. But clean, organized, military sparse. Her father's touch. Reese stood in the center of the room. Turned slowly. This was where Marcus Donovan had lived when he wasn't being whoever he pretended to be. This was the truth of him. And it looked like loneliness. She found the whiskey in the kitchen cabinet. Maker's Mark. Half full. Her father's brand. The glass was in the sink. She rinsed it. Poured 2 fingers. Raised it to the empty room. To you, Colonel. Whatever the hell this is supposed to mean. The whiskey burned going down. Tasted like every bad decision she'd ever made. She poured another. Behind her, Max moved. She turned. The dog was standing now. His gaze locked on her. That K9 focus. It's fine, she said. Just one. Just to... Max walked toward her. Not aggressive. Purposeful. She lowered the glass. Max, at ease. He didn't ease. He closed the distance. Positioned himself between her and the bottle. We're not doing this again, she said. Voice harder. It's one drink. I'm fine. The dog sat, but he didn't move. And his gaze held that same absolute certainty from the apartment in Denver. No, I'm not in crisis, Reese said. I'm not about to hurt myself. I just want one goddamn drink to process the fact that my father left me in the middle of nowhere with nothing but... Max's paw came up, touched her hand, gentle, precise. The pressure point, the grounding technique. And Reese understood. This wasn't about one drink. It was about what one drink became. What it had been becoming for 2 years. The slow slide toward the night in Denver with the gun and the decision she'd almost made. Max had been trained for this, specifically, by a father who'd known his daughter was drowning and had sent the only lifeline he could. A soldier who didn't know how to quit. Reese set the glass down, stepped back, looked at the dog who'd just saved her again. You don't give up, do you? Max's tail wagged once. She knelt, eye level with him. This close she could see the scars in his coat, the white fur around his muzzle that meant age was coming, the weight of years in a gaze that had seen too much and stayed faithful anyway. Okay, she whispered. Okay, boy, I'll try. She stood, walked to the window, pulled aside the sheet covering it. Outside, Montana was turning gold in the late afternoon sun. The mountains distant and purple against the sky. The land rolling away toward horizons she'd never seen before. And above it all, stars were beginning to appear. So many stars. More than she'd ever seen in Boston or Denver or any place she'd been. The Milky Way visible as a river of light across the darkening blue. Some places don't save us by accident, she said quietly. To the window, to the stars, to the God she'd stopped believing was listening. They're prepared long before we arrive, waiting for us to find them when we're ready. Psalm 23:2 whispered in her memory, words her mother had read to her as a child. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Behind her, Max settled on the floor, resting but alert, a warrior on watch. And Reese Donovan, 35 years old, broken and lost and 1,000 miles from anywhere that mattered, felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Not hope exactly, but not hopelessness either. Just possibility. She turned from the window. The apartment was still dusty, still abandoned, still the inheritance of a daughter who'd been forgotten. But it was hers, and she wasn't alone in it. We should probably eat something, she said to Max, then figure out what the hell we're supposed to do next. The dog's tail thumped agreement. Downstairs in the store, she found canned goods on the shelves. Some were probably safe. Most were questionable. She grabbed a can of soup with an expiration date from 3 years ago and decided to risk it. Max was with her, trailing a few steps behind, not at her heel like a pet, at her six like a partner. The way Tyler used to walk. She froze, can in hand, the memory rising like water over her head. But this time Max was there, pressing against her leg, warm and solid and real. She breathed, once, twice. The memory receded. Thank you, she whispered. Max just stood there, doing his job. She was halfway to the stairs when she realized he wasn't following. Max, come on. The dog hadn't moved. He was behind the counter, near the old cash register. His nose was working, scanning the floor with that systematic search pattern. Then he stopped. Saturday. Barked once, sharp, clear, and alert. Reese's training kicked in before conscious thought. Alert bark meant contact, threat or discovery. Something Max had been trained to identify. She moved to him, knelt. What is it, boy? Max's nose was fixed on a specific spot, a floor tile behind the counter. yellowed linoleum with a cigarette burn in one corner. It looked like every other tile, but Max was certain. Reese pressed on it. The tile shifted slightly, loose. Her pulse quickened. She looked around for a tool, found a screwdriver in a drawer full of rust and forgotten things. Wedged the tip into the seam of the tile. Pried. The tile came up easy. Too easy. Like it had been designed to. Beneath it was not concrete. It was a hollow. And in that hollow was a metal box. Military green, U.S. government issue, with a name stenciled on the side in white paint. M. Donovan. DIA. Reese's breath caught. DIA. Defense Intelligence Agency. Her father hadn't been Army. Not really. Not for 30 years. She lifted the box out. Heavy. Locked with a padlock that had been made to last. Max whined. Soft. Encouraging. This was what he'd been sent to find. This was why her father had made her take him. Reese sat on the dusty floor of her dead father's gas station with a lockbox in her lap and a K9 who'd just changed everything. Good boy, she whispered. Good boy, Max. She carried the box upstairs, found a hammer and chisel in the garage. It took 10 minutes of brutal work, but the lock finally gave. The lid opened. Inside, packed with military precision, a pair of dog tags, her father's. A photograph of a woman with kind eyes, her mother, dead 27 years. A brass key, ornate, heavy, the head shaped like a complex gear. And a journal, hardbound, government issue. Every page filled with blocks of letters and numbers that made no sense. Encrypted. Reese stared at the cipher. Her Ranger training kicked in. She recognized the pattern. Substitution-based, complex, military grade. But breakable. If you had the time. If you had the will. If you had a reason. She looked at Max. The dog sat watching her, waiting. He wanted me to find this, she said. He sent you to make sure I did. Max's tail wagged. Reese opened the journal to the first page. Started working the cipher in her head. Letter frequency. Pattern analysis. The mental muscle memory of 100 training exercises. It took 3 hours, but the first line decoded. Operation Shadowfall. DIA classified. Asset verification. 200 million US dollars. $200 million. Reese read it again, then again. Her hands started shaking. This wasn't an inheritance. This was a mission. And her father, even in death, had just reactivated her. Part 2, The Hidden True. For 3 days, Reese Donovan lived in the cipher. November 15th through 17th, 2024. 72 hours of breaking her father's code. The journal consumed her. She worked at the kitchen table under the yellow lamp, filling pages with frequency charts and pattern analysis. Letters became numbers. Numbers became possibilities. Possibilities became words. And words became truth. Max stayed close. Not at her feet like a pet seeking attention, at her six like a sentry on watch. He seemed to understand that she'd found her mission again, that the woman who'd been drifting had caught a current and was moving with purpose. On November 16th, when she forgot to eat, Max left his post, returned with a protein bar from the convenience store downstairs carried gently in his jaws. Set it on the table beside her work. She stared at him. You brought me food. The dog's tail wagged once. Your training covered that too. Max sat, waited for her to eat. She did. On November 17th, as dawn light crept through the window and turned the Montana sky from black to purple to gold, she decoded a full entry. Agent Blackbird reporting. Asset transfer confirmed via Evangeline Gallery. Geneva account active. Guidance system shipment cleared customs Dubai. Blackstone network operational. Reese read it twice, then looked at the date. 3 years ago. Before she'd deployed to Kandahar. Before Tyler. Before everything. Her father had been investigating something. Someone. An operation called Blackstone. Using his cover as a retired colonel with a forgotten gas station to run surveillance on an arms trafficking network. And the name Evangeline. Her sister's gallery. The one in Manhattan that hosted charity galas and celebrities and moved millions in art every year. Reese's pulse hammered. She flipped pages. Decoded faster now that she had the pattern. Entry after entry. Years of surveillance, meetings, wire transfers, shell companies. And 2 names kept appearing. Evangeline Donovan. Garrett Donovan. Her throat closed. No, she whispered. No, they wouldn't. They couldn't be that stupid, that greedy, that... Max whined, stood, pressed against her leg. She looked down at him, at the scars he carried, at the purple heart tag that said he'd bled for his country. Did he know? She asked the dog. Did my father know what they were, what they'd become? The canine's steady gaze held hers. Yes, of course he'd known. Marcus Donovan didn't leave things to chance, didn't make guesses. He gathered evidence, built cases, and when he was certain, he left the proof to the only child he could trust. Reese stood, Paced. The apartment felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. Lord, she said to the empty air, to the God she was learning to pray to again, if you want me to understand this, if this is the sign I asked for, I need more. I need to know what I'm supposed to do with it. Max's ears pricked forward. A sound. Outside. Reese froze, listened. The crunch of tires on gravel. Slow, deliberate. She moved to the window. Carefully, pulled the sheet aside just enough to see. A sedan. Dark blue. Not local. Too clean. Too new. It parked by the gas pumps. A man got out. Mid-50s. Unremarkable. Khaki jacket. Baseball cap. Could have been a tourist. Could have been anyone. Except tourists didn't come to Oak Ridge. And they definitely didn't come to a gas station that hadn't pumped fuel in 15 years. The man walked toward the store, casual, hands in pockets. Reese's training screamed at her. Assessment. Threat evaluation. The automatic calculus of someone who'd survived combat. Unarmed. Probably no visible weapon, but the way he moved, controlled, aware. Former military maybe, or law enforcement, or intelligence. The bell above the door chimed as he entered. That little brass bell her father must have installed decades ago. Still worked, still rang clear in the silence. Reese was already moving. Down the stairs. Quiet on her feet despite the old wood. Max followed without sound. She entered the store through the back, positioned herself behind the counter like she'd been there all along. Working, normal. The man was browsing the shelves. Picked up a can of soup, checked the expiration date, set it down with a small smile. Then he noticed her. Oh, hey there, didn't think anyone was around. Midwestern accent, neutral, friendly. Can I help you? Reese kept her voice flat. Professional. Just passing through, saw the sign. Thought I'd grab some water if you've got any. Cooler's broken, everything's warm. That'll do. She watched him select a bottle from the shelf. Watched his hands, his eyes. The way he moved through the space like he was memorizing it. Definitely not a tourist. He approached the counter, set the bottle down, pulled out his wallet. Then he glanced out the window, at the mountains, at the sky turning from afternoon to evening. Beautiful country out here, he said. Stars certainly are bright in Oak Ridge tonight. The words hit like artillery. Stars certainly are bright in Oak Ridge tonight. Challenge phrase. Page 47 of her father's journal. The entry from 2 years ago. Updated protocols for agent contact. Her mouth went dry. This was a test, or a contact, or both. The response was there in her memory. She'd decoded it yesterday. But saying it made this real, made her part of whatever her father had built, whatever he'd left her to finish. The man waited, patient, still smiling, but his eyes had changed, sharper now, assessing. Reese swallowed. But the moon shines brighter over the mountains. The man's smile didn't waver, but something settled in his posture. Confirmation. He nodded once. That'll be $2. She rang it up, took his 5, made change. Their fingers didn't touch. He took his water, turned to leave. Paused at the door. Place like this, he said, not looking at her, ought to be preserved. History here. Important history. Some folks might not understand that. Might want to tear it down, build something else. I'm not selling. Good. That's real good. Then he was gone. Back to his sedan, engine starting, gravel crunching as he pulled away. Reese stood behind the counter, hands braced on the old wood, heart hammering. Max pressed against her leg. He knows, she whispered. Someone out there knows what this place is. What it was. But who and how many? And what did they want? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it, let it ring 3 times before answering. Reese? Garrett's voice, smooth, professional, cold. I wanted to follow up on our meeting in Boston. I have nothing to say to you. That's unfortunate, because I have something to say to you. We're prepared to offer $750,000 for the Montana property. That's generous considering its condition. I said I'm not selling. A pause. She could hear him breathing, controlled, deliberate. You should reconsider. That land's not worth anything. The building's condemned. The business is dead. You're sitting on a liability, little sister. Let us take it off your hands. Why do you care? You got $15 million. What's a dead gas station to you? Another pause, longer this time. When Garrett spoke again, the warmth had gone from his voice, left only the cold underneath. Don't be stubborn, Reese. Don't make this difficult. You've always had a problem with authority. With listening to people who know better. It's why you washed out. I didn't wash out. I served honorably. You served broken, and you came home more broken. Everyone knows it. The failed psych eval, the drinking, the reason you can't hold a job. Her hand tightened on the phone. We're trying to help you, Garrett continued. We're offering you money you desperately need for property you can't maintain. Take the deal. Move on with your life. No, Reese. I said no. Goodbye, Garrett. She ended the call, stood there in the fading light, shaking with anger. With the old shame he knew exactly how to trigger. Max whined, soft, concerned. She knelt, buried her face in his fur. They want it, she whispered. They want this place, which means there's something here worth more than a condemned gas station. The journal, of course. They didn't know she'd found it, but they knew their father had been watching them, gathering evidence, and they needed to destroy it before anyone else found it. Before she found it. Too late. Reese stood, looked at Max. We need to keep digging. The dog's tail wagged. On the night of November 18th at 2 in the morning, Max woke her. Not with sound, with presence. Standing beside the mattress where she'd finally collapsed, staring at her with that K9 intensity that meant alert. Reese sat up. We said, "What is it?" Max turned, walked to the door. She followed. Down the stairs, through the store, into the garage. The space was dark, smelled of oil and rust and abandonment. 2 bay doors, concrete floor cracked and stained, tools hanging on pegboards probably worthless with age. Max moved with purpose, past the bay doors, to the back wall, stopped in front of an electrical panel, ancient, metal, covered in old warning labels and disconnected switches that probably hadn't worked in decades. The dog sat, stared at one specific point. A bolt head, hexagonal, rusted over. Reese knelt, examined it, wiped away grime with her thumb. The metal underneath wasn't rusted. It was painted to look rusted, and the bolt head was too perfect, too clean in the angles. Her pulse kicked. She ran upstairs, grabbed the brass key from the footlocker, the one with the gear-shaped head she hadn't understood. Back in the garage, she held it up to the fake bolt. Perfect match. Her hands trembled as she inserted the key. It slid home with a click that echoed in the silence. She turned it. For a moment, nothing. Then a hiss. Hydraulic. Modern. The entire wall panel began to move, sliding sideways with impossible smoothness for something that looked abandoned. Behind it revealed inch by inch a stainless steel door. Clean, pristine, a small LED above it glowing green. The door slid open. Inside was an elevator. Brushed metal, LED lighting, a simple panel with 2 buttons. Up, down. Reese stared. Max walked in, sat, looked back at her, waiting. She stepped inside. The floor was solid, real. This wasn't a hallucination born from too much decoding and not enough sleep. This was real. She pressed down. The door slid shut. The elevator descended. Smooth, silent, going deeper than any basement should go. 10 feet, 20, 30. When it stopped, the door opened onto a room that didn't belong in Montana. Didn't belong in any gas station. Didn't belong in the world Reese thought she knew. 2,000 square feet. Climate controlled. Humming with the soft sound of electronics. Server banks lined one wall. Lights blinking in sequence. Active. Powered. A central command console. Multiple monitors. Dark now, but clearly functional. Maps on another wall. World maps. Dotted with pins and notations in handwriting she recognized. Her father's. And against the far wall, a weapon locker. Military grade. Locked but visible through the wire mesh. Rifles, handguns, equipment she recognized from her service. This wasn't a basement. This was an intelligence facility. Die Outpost Whiskey 7. Her legs felt weak. She grabbed the back of a chair for support. Max walked to the center of the room. Completely calm, like he'd been here before. He had been here before. The main monitor flickered to life. Reese jumped, spun. On the screen, a video player opened. Automatic, triggered by their presence. And there he was. Colonel Marcus Donovan, her father, in full dress uniform, sitting in this very room, recording a message for a daughter he'd never trusted with the truth while he was alive. His ice blue eyes looked directly at the camera, directly at her. "Reese," he said. His voice filled the bunker. Firm, clear. The voice that had commanded men and operations and never showed doubt. "If you're watching this, then you found your way, and my faith in you was not misplaced." Air caught in her lungs. "What you see around you is designated DIA Outpost Whiskey 7. I have been its commander for 32 years. The gas station above is a cover, a perfect piece of Americana that no one would ever look at twice. My life here was a lie, daughter, but it was a lie in service to my country." He paused. For the first time, emotion flickered across his face. "I know I was not the father you needed. I was absent, cold, demanding. I treated you like a soldier when you needed a parent. For that, I am sorry." Tears blurred her vision. "But I did watch you, Reese. I watched you become everything I hoped. A ranger, a warrior. Someone who understood duty and sacrifice in a way your siblings never could." The image shifted. He leaned forward slightly. Garrett and Evangeline, they are my children, my blood, and they have become something I cannot ignore, something dangerous. He pressed a button off camera. Documents appeared on the screen. Financial records, shipping manifests, photographs of her siblings with people Reese didn't recognize. For 3 years, I have gathered evidence. Your brother's company, SafeTech Defense, has been selling restricted guidance systems to the black market. Your sister's gallery has been laundering the profits through art sales to sanctioned buyers. Together, they are the operational heads of an international arms trafficking network called Blackstone. Reese's knees buckled. She sat hard in the chair. The assets I have accumulated through my service and carefully managed investments total approximately $200 million. I did not leave this to you out of pity. I left it because you are the only one who will use it correctly. The only one who understands that wealth is a weapon, a tool, a responsibility. His gaze seemed to look straight into her soul. What you do with it now is your mission, daughter. The journal contains all the evidence needed to bring them to justice. Agent Blackwood will contact you. Trust her, work with her, finish what I started. He paused again. When he spoke next, his voice was softer. And Max, he is not just a K-9. He was my companion for 4 years, my partner in this lonely outpost. I trained him specifically for you, for your needs, your wounds. He will protect you when I cannot. He will guide you when you are lost. On screen, her father's hand moved. The camera angle shifted. Max was visible beside him, younger, sitting at attention. He knows you better than you know yourself, her father said. Trust him. He will not fail you. The video ended. The screen went dark. Reese sat in the silence of the bunker, tears streaming down her face, grief and anger and understanding crashing through her like waves. Her father had known, had seen his children become monsters, had chosen her the broken one, the failure to stop them, because she was the only one who would. Max came to her, pressed his forehead against hers. She wrapped her arms around him. God didn't bring us here by accident, did he, boy? She whispered. Isaiah 40:31 rose in her mind, words her mother used to read to her before she died. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. She pulled back, looked at Max. Okay, she said. Okay, we have a mission. The dog's tail wagged. For the next 5 days, November 19th through 23rd, Reese lived between two worlds. Upstairs, she maintained the fiction, cleaned the store, made minimal repairs, learned the rhythms of Oak Ridge's slow life. Downstairs in the bunker, she worked. The computer system was military-grade but intuitive. Her father had left her access to everything. Financial records, surveillance logs, encrypted communications with other DIA operatives, and a file labeled Operation Shadowfall. She opened it. The scope took her breath away. Garrett's company had been selling components to shell corporations for 5 years. Guidance chips, detonator systems, drone technology, all restricted, all illegal, all ending up in the hands of insurgent groups and criminal networks across the Middle East and Africa. Evangeline's gallery was the washing machine. Art sold for inflated prices to buyers who never existed. Money moved through banks in Geneva, Dubai, Macau, clean on one end, weapons grade on the other. Together, they'd moved $400 million in illegal arms and built an empire on blood. Reese's hands shook as she read. Then she reached a file dated September 15th, 2022. Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. IE Tech. 3 American soldiers killed. She didn't want to open it. Had to open it. Inside, forensic analysis of the bomb components. Serial numbers traced to a shipment cleared through Dubai Customs 6 months earlier. Shipped by a shell company owned by SafeTech Defense Systems. Funded by the Blackstone Network. Authorized by Garrett Donovan. The room tilted. Tyler's face flashed in her mind. That smile, that certainty he was going home. Reese stood, stumbled, hit the console with her fist. The pain was sharp, real, not enough. She screamed, raw, agonized. Her brother had killed Tyler. Her own blood had built the behemoth that turned her best friend into red mist and screaming. Had funded the people who'd planted it, who'd triggered it, who'd walked away while she held pieces of a man who'd wanted to propose to his girlfriend at Fenway Park. She collapsed, knees hitting the floor, hands shaking so hard she couldn't control them. The flashback came. Desert sun, dust in her mouth, the crater, the blood. Tyler's dog tags in her hand because there wasn't enough left to need them. Couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't. Weight on her shoulders, pressure, specific, measured, maximums. The K9 had placed his paws on her shoulders, his weight distributed perfectly. A trained technique for PTSD episodes. Grounding through deep pressure therapy. Reese grabbed him, held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had shattered. He didn't move, just stood there, letting her feel his heartbeat, his warmth, his presence. Slowly, the flashback receded. The bunker came back into focus. Her breathing steadied. Max pressed his nose to her cheek, gentle. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, boy." She didn't know how long they stayed like that. Her kneeling on the cold floor, him standing guard over her breaking point. Eventually, she found the strength to stand, to look at the evidence again, to feel the rage crystallize into something colder. Purpose. The elevator chimed. Reese spun, hand going to her belt where her service weapon wasn't anymore. The door opened. A woman stepped out. 52, sharp eyes, navy pantsuit, gun visible at her hip. She raised her hands, calm, showing she meant no threat. "Reese Donovan," she said. "I'm Catherine Blackwood, DIA. I was your father's handler for 15 years. Reese didn't relax. "How did you get in?" "Your father gave me access codes for emergencies." Blackwood's eyes took in the bunker, the open files, Reese's tear-stained face. "I'd say this qualifies." Max hadn't barked, hadn't alerted. He sat calmly beside Reese. He knew this woman. "We've been monitoring the outpost since the colonel died," Blackwood continued. "We saw you arrive. We've been waiting to see if you'd find the bunker, if you'd understand what he left you. He left me evidence that my siblings are arms dealers. Yes, that they killed my friend." Blackwood's expression softened. "Yes, I'm sorry, truly. Are you here to arrest them? We're here to help you finish what your father started." Blackwood moved to the console, pulled up new files. "FBI has been building a parallel case. 6 months of surveillance, but they don't have what you have. The financial records, the direct communications, the proof." She turned, looked at Reese directly. "Your father's journal is the key. Combined with what we've gathered, it's enough to bring down the entire Blackstone network. 43 people across 6 countries, including Garrett and Evangeline." Reese's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. "Evangeline." She answered on speaker. "Little sister," Evangeline's voice was silk over steel. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About a business proposition. You have something that belongs to our family. Father's records, his files. We'd like them back." "I don't know what you're talking about." A laugh, cold gum. "Please, you found the bunker. We've known about it for years. We just never had the key. But you did. Father left it to you because he was a sentimental fool." Reese's jaw clenched. "Here's the offer," Evangeline continued. "Split the 200 million. 3 ways, equal shares. We all walk away happy. You get the money you desperately need. We get the records destroyed. Everyone wins. And if I refuse, silence. Then that would be unfortunate for you." The line went dead. Blackwood was already moving, pulling out her phone. "I'm increasing surveillance. They're getting desperate." "How desperate?" Reese asked. "Desperate enough to make mistakes. Stay alert. Keep Max close." That night, Reese couldn't sleep. She lay in the apartment above the key station staring at the ceiling. Max was on the floor beside the bed, his breathing steady, on watch even in sleep. The clock read 2:17 a.m. when he moved. Not slowly, not the casual shift of a dog adjusting position. Fast, alert, combat ready. His growl started low, built to something Reese had never heard from him before. Pure warning, pure threat. She was out of bed in seconds, barefoot, reaching for the Beretta on the nightstand. "Max, report." The K9 was at the window, hackles raised, staring down at the lot below. Reese looked. 2 figures, black tactical gear, moving with professional silence toward the garage. Not customers, not lost travelers, hunters. She grabbed her phone, texted Blackwood, "Intruders, 2 armed, garage." Response came instantly. "Team 8 minutes out, do not engage." Reese looked at Max. "At the dog trained for combat, for protection, for exactly this moment." "Sorry, Catherine," she whispered. 8 minutes is too long." She moved down the stairs, Max at her heel, silent despite the old wood. The garage door was being forced. She heard the grind of a pry bar against metal. Reese grabbed the tire iron from the wall. Heavy, familiar. A ranger could make a weapon from anything. The door lifted 6 inches. A hand appeared underneath. Then an arm. Max didn't wait for the command. He launched. Full K9 assault. 85 pounds of trained fury. Hit the man's arm as he tried to roll under the door. The scream was immediate, satisfying. The second intruder came through fast, gun drawn. Reese was faster. She stepped inside his reach, brought the tire iron down on his wrist, felt bone crack. The gun clattered to concrete. Follow through, knee to the solar plexus. He folded. The first man had scrambled back outside, nursing his torn arm. His partner was down, gasping. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Both intruders fled, stumbling into the darkness, gone. Reese stood in the garage, heart hammering, tire iron in her shaking hands. Max trotted back to her, sat, looked up. Mission complete. FBI vehicles flooded the lot 3 minutes later. Blackwood emerged already shouting orders. You were supposed to wait. They were breaking in. I defended my property. Blackwood's expression was somewhere between furious and impressed. Did you ID them? No faces, tactical gear, professional. Garrett's people, testing your defenses, seeing what you're capable of. Now they know. Now they'll escalate. Blackwood looked at the damaged garage door, at the blood on the concrete. This is about to get worse, Reese. They're running out of time, running out of options. She was right, because 3 days later, everything changed. Reese was in the bunker on the morning of November 26, decoding the final sections of the journal. Max was beside her. The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the mountains. Peace, quiet, purpose. Then she heard it. Outside, distant but distinct, a vehicle moving fast. She pulled up the cameras. An unmarked van, racing away from the property. Why would someone? Max wasn't beside her. She turned. His bed was empty. Max? Nothing. Max. She ran upstairs, through the store, outside. The morning was cold. Her breath misted. No Max. She ran around the building, calling, searching. Found him in the tall grass behind the garage, lying on his side, breathing, but groggy, wrong. She dropped beside him, ran her hands over his body. No blood, no wounds. Then she saw it. A dart, small tranquilizer, stuck in his shoulder. Her blood turned to ice. She pulled it out. The needle was professional, medical grade. They'd taken him down without killing him, which meant they wanted him alive. Which meant her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello, Reese. Garrett's voice, but different now. No pretense, no charm, just cold calculation. I trust you've noticed your companion is missing. Her hand tightened on the phone. If you heard him, he's perfectly fine for now. Beautiful animal. Would be a shame if something happened to him. She was shaking, with rage, with fear. You have something I need, Garrett continued. Father's journals, all of them. You're going to bring them to me. Where? The old sawmill, Oak Ridge Lumber. 45 minutes. Come alone. Let me talk to him. Let me hear him. A pause, then a sound, muffled, a whine. Maximums. He's alive, Garrett said, and he'll stay that way if you cooperate. 45 minutes. Alone. If we see FBI, DIA, anyone, the dog dies. Am I clear? Yes. Good. The clock's ticking, sister. The line went dead. Reese knelt in the grass, holding her phone. The tranquilizer dart, shaking with a rage so pure it was almost calm. They had Max. They had her partner, her guardian. The dog her father had left to protect her. And they thought that made them powerful. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. She dialed Blackwood. They took him, she said when the agent answered. They took Max. They want the journals. Where? Oak Ridge Sawmill, 45 minutes. Don't go. Let us. I'm going. Reese, this is a trap. They'll kill you. They'll kill Max if I don't. Her voice was steel. I won't let him die like Tyler died. Not while I can stop it. Silence on the other end. Then 20 minutes. I can have a team in position in 20 minutes. Go in wired. Let us listen. When we have confirmation, we move. Make it 20. They won't wait. 20, but Reese, stay smart. Don't do anything stupid. I'm going to save my dog, Reese said. And then I'm going to finish this. She hung up, looked at the mountains, at the sky turning gold with morning. Lord, she whispered, I'm choosing to save instead of destroy, to protect instead of revenge. If that's your will, guide my steps. Matthew 6:14 came to her mother's favorite verse. For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. She wasn't sure she could forgive, but she could save. And right now, that would have to be enough. Part 3, the final stand. Reese went to the bunker one last time. The real journal sat on the console. Her father's careful handwriting, years of evidence, the key to destroying Blackstone. She couldn't risk them. 20 minutes. She had 20 minutes. She grabbed blank government-issue notebooks from her father's supply locker, sat at the console, started writing. Random letters, number sequences, mimicking the encryption patterns she'd spent weeks breaking, making it look real enough to pass a quick inspection. Not perfect, but believable. Max watched from... No, Max wasn't there. Max was in a cage somewhere waiting for her to save him. She finished 3 notebooks, stuffed them in the messenger bag. The real journals went into the weapons locker. Behind a false panel, her father had shown her in his video message. If they get me, she said to the empty bunker, they get nothing. Blackwood gets everything. She grabbed the Beretta, checked the magazine, chambered around, then stopped, looked at the weapon, at her reflection in the monitor screens. She wasn't going to the sawmill to kill Garrett, wasn't going for revenge. She was going to save Max. The rest was Blackwood's job. Reese safed the weapon, tucked it into her waistband anyway, just in case. Blackwood called as she was leaving. Wires ready. Teams moving into position. Go slow. Give us time. Understood. And Reese, your father would be proud of you. She ended the call, got in the truck, drove toward the sawmill with fake journals and real purpose. The Oak Ridge lumber mill had been dead for 20 years. Reese drove past it twice before committing. The building sat at the end of a dirt road that disappeared into scrub pine and forgotten Montana landscape. Corrugated metal walls rusted to the color of dried blood. Windows broken or boarded over. The kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard the screaming. Perfect for what her siblings had planned. She parked the F-150 50 yards out, killed the engine, sat in the silence and listened to her heartbeat. 43 minutes since Garrett's call. She'd made it with 2 minutes to spare. The wire under her shirt was a small, hard lump against her ribs. Blackwood was listening. Had a tactical team moving into position in the tree line. 20 minutes, she'd said. But Max didn't have 20 minutes. He had now. Reese checked the Beretta, loaded, chambered. She tucked it into the small of her back under her jacket. Not concealed well, but Garrett would expect her to be armed. Would probably take it immediately. Let him. The real weapon was her training. She got out. The November wind cut through her jacket, smelled like pine and coming snow and the particular emptiness of places humanity had given up on. The main door to the mill hung open, darkness beyond. Reese walked toward it, slow, hands visible, showing she was complying. Inside the mill was a cathedral of industrial decay. The ceiling soared 30 feet up, corrugated metal and exposed beams. Concrete floor cracked and stained, sawdust still thick in corners. Light came from the center of the space. Portable work lights on stands, creating a circle of harsh illumination in the surrounding dark. And in that circle, a steel cage. Maximum's. He was lying on his side, still groggy from the tranquilizer. But his head lifted when she entered. His tail moved once. Weak, but alive. Relief flooded through her so intense it was almost painful. Beyond the cage, two figures stood in the light. Garrett wore a tactical vest over his designer suit. Looked ridiculous. Looked dangerous. He held a pistol with comfortable familiarity. Beside him stood Evangeline. She'd abandoned the Manhattan elegance for something more practical. Black pants, dark sweater, her hair pulled back severe. She looked like their father. Same sharp features, same expression of absolute certainty. Two armed men flanked them, private security. Reese stopped at the edge of the light, 20 feet from them. Close enough to talk, far enough to move. I'm here, she said. Let him go. Garrett smiled, not warmth, calculation. Show me the journals first. She held up the leather messenger bag. Right here. All of them. Bring them closer. Release Max. You're not in a position to negotiate, little sister. Neither are you. She nodded at the bag. These are the only copies. You destroy them, you destroy the only evidence that could put you away. But if something happens to me, Catherine Blackwood has instructions to deliver everything to the FBI. A lie, but a good one. Evangeline's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Try me. Silence. The kind that precedes violence or capitulation. Garrett lowered his weapon slightly. Fine, bring the bag. We'll make the exchange simultaneously. Reese walked forward, slow, counting steps, getting closer to Max, closer to her siblings. Closer to the truth, she needed them to speak aloud. She stopped 5 feet from Garrett, set the bag on the concrete between them. Open it, he said. She unzipped it, pulled out the journals, her father's careful handwriting visible on the exposed pages. Garrett gestured to one of his security men. Check them. The man approached, took the top journal, flipped through pages, frowned. These are coded, he said. Of course they're coded, Reese replied. He was DIA. Everything's encrypted, but the cipher's breakable. I did it. You can too. Garrett's eyes searched her face, looking for the lie. She kept her expression flat, empty. He nodded to his man. Get the dog. The security guard moved to the cage, started working the lock. Max struggled to his feet, unsteady, but clearer now. The lock clicked open. The guard reached for Max's collar. That's when Evangeline spoke. Do you know why Father hated us, Reese? Her voice cut through the moment, made everyone pause. Reese looked at her sister. Because you're criminals. Evangeline laughed, sharp, bitter. No, because we reminded him of who he really was, what he'd become in 30 years of lying for his country. She stepped forward, into the light. Her face was cold, beautiful, terrible. Cold, ambitious, willing to sacrifice anything for the mission. That was Marcus Donovan. That's what the DIA made him. And when he looked at Garrett and me, he saw himself. Everything he hated about what he'd become. That's why you became arms dealers. Reese kept her voice level. Because Daddy didn't love you enough. We became successful, Garrett said, voice hard. We built something real. Not just secrets and lies in a forgotten bunker. We built empires. You built them on blood, Reese said, on selling weapons to terrorists, on capitalism, Evangeline interrupted. Supply and demand. We supplied, they paid. That's not evil, little sister. That's economics. You killed people. War kills people. We just profited from the reality everyone pretends doesn't exist. Reese felt her hands curl into fists, force them open. You killed Tyler Garrett. Silence. Evangeline's smile was ice. Who? My friend. My brother. September 2022. Kandahar. IED made with components you sold through SafeTech, funded by your network. Garrett shrugged. Unfortunate, but collateral damage happens. You of all people should understand that. The words hit like a physical blow. Collateral damage. Tyler reduced to a statistic, to an acceptable loss in their profit margins. Then Garrett smiled. Cold, victorious. You want to know the real joke little sister father knew. For 2 years he knew we were Blackstone. He could have stopped us anytime. Reese froze. But he didn't, Garrett continued. Know why? Because he was using us, using Blackstone to track bigger networks. We were his bait, his asset. Evangeline's eyes widened. Garrett, shut up. She deserves to know. Dear old Dad was willing to let American soldiers die if it meant catching the bigger fish. That's who Marcus Donovan really was. Cold, ruthless, just like us. The words hit like artillery. He only turned on us, Garrett said, when we got too big, too independent, when we stopped being useful. That's when he decided to take us down, not for justice, for control. Reese looked at her brother, at the lie designed to poison her father's memory, and she laughed. Short, sharp, genuine. You really think I'll believe that? You really think I don't know my father? She stepped forward. He gathered evidence for 3 years because he needed it to be airtight, because he was building a case that would survive legal challenges. That's not ruthless. That's careful. That's a man who understood that justice requires proof, not just accusations. Garrett's smile faltered. He left me the journals because he trusted me to finish what he started, to do it right, the way a soldier does it, with honor. She looked at both her siblings. You're not bait, you're not assets, you're criminals, and your time is up. Reese felt her hand move toward the Beretta at her back. Then she remembered Tyler's last words, smiling in the desert sun. You're gonna save lives, Reese. That's your real mission. Her father's video. This is not just money, it's a weapon, a tool. What you do with it is your mission. And the prayer she'd whispered that morning. I'm choosing to save instead of destroy. Her hand stopped, stayed where it was. She coughed, twice, sharp. The signal. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the lights exploded. Every portable lamp in the circle shattered simultaneously. Sniper fire from the tree line, precision shooting in the dark. The mill plunged into chaos. Shouts, movement, Garrett spinning. Floodlights blazed from outside, mounted on vehicles, turning night into artificial day. FBI, hands on your heads now. The voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Reese was already moving, not toward her siblings, not toward the guns, toward Max. The guard at the cage had drawn his weapon, was turning toward the sound of federal agents breaching the building. Reese hit him low. Football tackle, Ranger training, drive through the target. They went down hard. His weapon skittered away. She scrambled up, grabbed Max's collar. Come on, boy, we're leaving. The K9 was still unsteady, but he followed, trusting her, moving with her. Behind them, the FBI flooded in. Tactical team, black gear, rifles, moving with choreographed precision. Down on the ground. Garrett hesitated. For one crucial second, he considered fighting. Then he saw the red laser dots on his chest. 3 of them. Sniper Overwatch. He dropped the weapon, raised his hands. Evangeline was smarter. She went to her knees immediately, hands behind her head. But her eyes found Reese's across the space, and they promised murder. Reese knelt beside Max, ran her hands over him, checking for injuries. He licked her hand, weak but insistent. I got you, she whispered. I got you, boy. Mission complete. Catherine Blackwood materialized from the organized chaos. She holstered her weapon, looked at Reese with something like approval. Nice work. The Wire gave us everything we needed. Confession, intent, conspiracy. Is it enough? More than enough. Combined with your father's evidence, we'll put them away for decades. Reese stood, watched FBI agents cuff her siblings, read them their rights. Garrett's eyes found hers as they led him past. You'll regret this, he said, voice low, venomous. Family doesn't do this to family. You stopped being my family when you chose profit over people, Reese replied. When you killed my brother for money. She paused. Let him see the absolute certainty in her face. I forgive you, I don't hate you, but the law doesn't forgive and justice doesn't care about blood. Then he was gone, loaded into a vehicle, driven away. Evangeline went quietly, but she turned at the threshold, looked back. You win, little sister, but you're still weak, still broken, still the failure father pitied. Reese smiled, sad, final. I have Max, I have purpose, I have peace. What do you have? No answer. Then Evangeline was gone too. The mill emptied, evidence collected, scene secured. Blackwood approached one final time. You should know, the journals you gave them were fakes. I know. The real ones are with the FBI now, being used to build cases against everyone in the Blackstone network. 43 arrests across 6 countries. Good. It's because of your father. Because of you. You finished what he started. Reese looked at the K9 beside her. No, she said, we finished it together. 3 months later, the trial began. United States District Court, Boston. Federal charges. United States versus Garrett Donovan, Evangeline Donovan, Etta Lee. Reese sat in the public gallery, Max beside her in a service vest. She watched the proceedings with quiet certainty. Prosecutors laid out the case. Financial records, shipping manifests, communications, the entire architecture of the Blackstone network. On the 12th day after 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Guilty, all counts. Garrett, 35 years federal prison, no parole. Evangeline, 30 years. Across 6 countries, 38 additional arrests, 400 million in assets seized. The gavel fell. Justice was served. Reese was called to give a victim impact statement. She stood at the podium, looked at the judge, at her siblings. Tyler Garrett was my brother in arms, she said, voice steady. He died because the people who share my blood sold weapons for profit. Sold them knowing they'd kill American soldiers. She paused. My father spent 3 years gathering evidence, building a case, serving his country in the shadows. He left that evidence to me because he believed I would finish the mission. She looked directly at Garrett and Evangeline. I have. Your network is destroyed, your freedom is gone, but I want you to know something. Her voice softened. I forgive you, I don't hate you. Hate is poison I won't carry. You chose your path. You'll live with those consequences, but I choose peace. She stepped back. Thank you, Your Honor. The courtroom was silent. Then she walked out, Max at her side. 1 year later, November 2025. The Montana sky was impossible blue. Reese stood on the porch of what used to be Donovan's service station and looked at what it had become. The sign above read Donovan Garrett Veterans Center. 200 people filled the parking lot. Veterans, families, press. Catherine Blackwood was there, smiling. Rebecca Walsh wheeled to the microphone. Hope, her Belgian Malinois, sat beside her. 2 years ago, I lost my legs, Rebecca said. I thought I'd lost everything. Then this foundation gave me hope. She saved my life, every single day. The applause was thunderous. As the ceremony wound down, Reese slipped away. Found Max in the twilight. We made it, boy, she whispered. The K9's tail wagged. Inside, 50 veterans and their new service dogs were laughing, bonding, healing. Reese looked up at the stars, so many stars. Miracles don't fall from heaven, she said quietly. They grow from dark places, where faith rebuilds what war destroyed. She pulled out her phone, posted, if this story touched you, share it. Comment your city. May God bless every soul with hope. Proverbs 12:10. The righteous care for the needs of their animals. Amen. Comments poured in. Atlanta, thank you. This brought me to tears. How do we apply? Max lay beside her, head on his paws, watching the building full of veterans finding their way home. His mission complete, but his watch never ending. That's what soldiers do. Reese knelt, ran her hand through his graying fur. Thank you for saving me, for showing me broken things can heal. The K9's eyes met hers, amber and wise and filled with love that asks nothing. The night deepened, stars multiplied. Inside, veterans laughed, dogs wagged, hope multiplied. Outside, a woman and a K9 sat together, battle-worn, scarred, victorious. Above them, the universe wheeled on, where faith rebuilt what war shattered, where loyalty never wavered, where broken soldiers found their way home. Together, the end.